Hey all, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this video we're going to be doing my top fun builds to try before DLC. And if you want to use any of these awesome builds for DLC too, we've got a couple holy options if holy ends up being really great, and we're going to be doing some DLC prep too. That's right, I'm going to show you where to get the smithing stone bell bearings and the somber smithing stone bell bearings as well, exactly on the map, as well as a checklist of things that you should do before DLC, because by the time this video releases we're only going to be about 5 or 6 days away. This is fun builds and DLC prep, and we're going to jump right in here with the Scavenger Dragon build. This is a really important one on this list, by the way, because it's probably the most powerful one out of all the ones on the list. These aren't ranked, by the way, but this involves a jump attack bleed build and incantations. For those that have never tried the combination of using a jump attack bleed build and then different dragon incantations and then stuff like swarm of flies. By the way, with this one I did add variety to it too, because we're also getting really high scaling with the dragon communion seal, so we have a lot of variety. This is much like an individual build I did a while back. Now, as I mentioned, you could use dragon incantations to powerful effect in combination with the seppuku jump attack build on the scavenger curved swords, because we have around 50 arcane, but you can also use an assortment of other incantations with an offhand seal boosting your damage. For instance, take this situation here. We have the Dragon Communion seal, and then our offhand we have the Godslayer seal. So we're getting around 320, 330 scaling on the Dragon Communion seal with decent arcane and a little bit of faith, and then we have the Godslayer seal to boost Black Flame by additional 10%. And you can do this with any offhand seal for the most part, other than something like the Golden Order seal, because you need intelligence scaling. You could pretty much use this for the offhand boost on anything. So switch it to the Giant seal if you want to use fire incantations like Vernal Flame, or even the Gravelstone seal if you want to use Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. Yeah, you got a lot of options with this one. I like combining in Swarm of Flies too, because of course we're going to be using Lord of Blood's Exaltation and the White Mass, because that's going to boost any bleed procs we get by 30% and our damage in general by 30%. When you get that proc, it works for everything. You can even switch to incantations and have a 30% boost to damage after you switch. Yeah, it really does make for a great build, because you have all the power of a bleed build and all the versatility of a faith build. I love that. Let's jump into equipment. And we have two scavenger curved swords on occult with seppuku. We have the Dragon Communion seal. We're using offhand seals, different ones for the boost. White Mass, hit 51 poise, Claw Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Godfrey Icon, Rottenwing Sword Insignia, Thorny Tear, Flame Tear, and I was using bloodboil aromatic for my body buff for this one. Howl would be really good though for the incantations. You could use the Raptor's Black Feathers for more damage, 60 Vigor, 30 Faith, 50 Arcane, Golden Vow, Flame Grip and Strength, Blessing's Boon, Swarm of Flies, Black Flame, and then if you want to, you could use Burn of Flame too. And the next one on this list is the Rotten Dragon build. These first two are the same stats, and then we're going to move on from there. As far as the Rotten build goes, we're going to be using, of course, Rot Breath, building around that to get Rot procs, and then, of course, doing damage with Swarm of Flies, and the Neck Keeper here too. So the point of this one basically is to get as much rot build up as you can, and then the damage is going to tick down fast at this point. We're going to be building around Rot Breath mainly, and then you could use Swarm of Flies for some bleed build up too, and the Nagakiba we're using with Unsheath, which can posture break as well. We're not building up really too much on fast attacks. We're more working towards getting a lot of damage out of Unsheath and then posture damage, and then of course using that Rot Breath mechanic, just having the Rot proc so that we can watch the boss's HP bar go down quickly and we can continue our attacks in the process. It's a really cool and effective build. Real quick, by the way, if you're not subbed, definitely be sure to sub to this channel if you've been enjoying my build list lately. DLC is almost here. By the time this video releases, it's only going to be 5 days away. I cannot wait. We're almost there. We've got a ton new weapons and builds to look forward to, no doubt about it. We know Fromsoftware is not going to disappoint either. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be like that feeling when the game launched all over again, and we all can't wait for that. Honestly, it's not far away. It's right there. It's going to be here in no time. Yeah, I mean, we're almost there at this point. We have the Occult Nagakiba with Unsheath. We have the Dragon Communion seal, White Mass, same armor set, 51 poise. We have the Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Roar Medallion, which now increases breath attack damage, Ritual Sword Talisman, Green Burst Crystal Tier, and Faith Tier. And we have 60 Vigor, we have 40 Faith with the Faith Tier, we have 50 Arcane, we're using Golden Vow, Flame Grip Me Strength, Dragon Ice, Rot Breath of course, Swarm of Flies, and Blessing's Boon for some HP. So I've done a build like this before, but never with the Gargoyle Twin Blades. The Gargoyle Twin Blades actually have really good base damage and Sacred Affinity and Flame Art. Now the Bandit Curve Swords are probably better as you get to higher levels with the Beep scaling and Faith and Sacred, but for the Gargoyle Twin Blades, they're really cool with Sacred Blade. I just like the way they light up. I think it's cool. I think the way they light up, it's really noticeable. I mean, your whole character almost looks like it's lit up in just holy power, and this build could end up being good for DLC. If holy ends up being good, this is one of those ones that's going to have high DPS. So I love Elden Ring, but can we all acknowledge the fact that pretty much any build, and we could do this with Flame Art, with the Flaming Strike Ash of War, we could do this in Lightning Affinity with the Lightning Slash build, we could do this with Sacred Affinity, Bleed builds, etc. Damage for jump attack DPS is just insane with Twin Blades and Curved Swords. I mean, you could take down anything fast. Yeah, I kind of imagine that when they made the game, I'm not sure if they realized the amount of builds we'd make with jump attacks and how much damage and DPS you can get for them. The build up when you have Rotten Wingsword Insignia, Millicent's Prosthesis if you're on New Game Plus, even regular Wingsword Insignia, Claw Talisman, Raptor's Black Feathers is crazy good. I mean, you take in any of these jump attack builds, the DLC, take in any of these builds whatsoever, I think you're going to be fine. They really are great in terms of damage per second. They're honestly incredible. Let's jump into equipment and stats. And for equipment, we have 2 Gargoyle Twin Blades in Sacred Affinity with Sacred Blade. We have the Erdtree Seal. We have the Raptor's Black Feathers. We did hit 51 poise. Sacred Scorpion Charm, Rotten Wingsword Insignia, Claw Talisman, Erdtree's Favorite +2, Holy Tier, and Thorny Tier. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, we have 70 Faith, we have 23 Mind, 23 Endurance. You're probably going to want a little bit more Endurance. 60 Faith is plenty for this build, so you can kind of spread points around from there. We're using Golden Vow, Howl, and Blessings of the Erdtree too. And next one up on this list is the Inquisitor build. This involves the Inquisitor weapon. I'm not sure how to say the second word, but it's something like Gerundol or something of that nature. And this is a spear that does fire damage and uses Charge Forth. So the weapon itself has a bit of quality scaling, but for me, with the C in strength and then having faith scaling, I'm going to run this as a bit of a faith build that uses a little bit of strength to get decent damage from the weapon, and then we can throw in incantations like Catch Flame as well. All footage for this video, by the way, is on Journey 39, so it's all New Game Plus 7. Everything has a ridiculous amount of poise, but keep in mind, the Ash of War Charge Forth will give you a decent amount of posture breaks on New Game and even New Game Plus. I'm not a huge fan of this weapon personally because I feel like the Ash of War is something that you can get and use on pretty much any of the regular spears in the game and whatnot, although it does do decent fire damage, and having that faith scaling is nice because you can combine it with a faith build for more versatility. Alright, in a second here we're going to go over equipment, stats, everything you need to know for this one. I'm not sure if I've ever covered this weapon before. Let's jump into equipment right here. And for equipment, we have the Inquisitor's Gerundol, or however you say that. We have the Giant Seal. We have the Great Helm, part of the Knight's Cavalry, set on 51 poise. Fire Scorpion Charm, Ritual Sword, Talisman Shard of Alexander, Godfrey Icon, Flame Tier, Faith Tier. We have the Godfrey Icon in case you want to use Burn O' Flame. We have 60 Vigor. We have 80 Faith. We're using Golden Vow, Howl, Blessings of the Erdtree, and then we're using Burn O' Flame mainly, and also Catch Flame. I recommend Catch Flame for this build. It combos well. Alright, so everyone's always asking me to do a shield poke build, so here's a shield poke build. We have the Naginata, which is great with Blood Flame Blade because we can build up bleed behind a shield, and then we have the Golden Great Shield as well. And we're using Barricade Shield, of course, because that'll allow us to defend a little bit more. Now, this boss is particularly hard-hitting in terms of being able to block and stuff, and a little bit stamina costly. You can use the Great Shield Talisman. That will help to some extent as well. One thing to note, though, is that that talisman was nerfed a while back, and it does less for bigger shields. So the smaller the shield, the more of a benefit, and the bigger shield, when you get to some of the great shields, the less it increases your ability to defend. It's actually to the point now where if you use it with the fingerprint shield, it's not that great. The fingerprint shield goes better, in my opinion, with Scholar Shield for the elemental resistance, and then a little bit of a boost to your guard as well. Yeah, something to mention too is that when you're behind a shield and you specifically use a spear is the best thing pretty much to use because you can hold your shield up, block consistently, use something like Barricade Shield, or if you have decent intelligence, even Scholar's Shield, and then continue to hit with your spear. instead of having to, of course, switch to the weapon and then block again afterwards, which is a lot of the other movesets for the weapon, which makes the spear class as a whole excellent. And the Naginata is one of my favorite along that class. I did this in quality affinity, but it also scales really well with dex if you happen to be a dexterity build. And the other thing is the Naginata naturally has around 50 bleed or so. With Bloodflame Blade, it's going to give you around 90 bleed. That now did end up wearing out throughout the fight. I would have had to reapply it, but overall having 90 bleed build up on relatively quick hits is really helpful too. All right, in a second here, we're going to go over equipment, stats, everything you need to know for this awesome build. Let's jump into equipment on this Defender, Shield, and Spear build. And we have the quality Naginata. I had Spectral Lance on it. We have the quality Golden Great Shield as well. Any seal for buffs, we hit 51 poise. Arsenal Charms +1 or Great Jar's Arsenal. Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman. Lord of Blood's Exaltation. Green Turtle Talisman. Dexterity tier and Faith tier. And by the way, the White Mask will increase your damage further, so it's not bad too. We have 60 Vigor. We have 30 Endurance. 40 Strength. 55 Dexterity with the Dexterity tier. 25 Faith with the Faith tier. Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, and Bloodflame Blade. And next up, we have the Fire Dance build. This is built around the Grave Scythe in Flame Art Affinity, and of course we're using Sword Dance too, which is giving us really good damage. We have a little bit of innate bleed on the weapon as well, and then we're using Giant's Flame Take V2. This is actually a really good build for a lot of different situations, because a lot of the enemies in the game take good fire damage. We have a little bit of innate bleed build up, and then of course, once again, I did a high focus on Faith for this one. You have the versatility of a Faith build. We're also using Whirl of Flame, though I'm not too impressed with that one specifically. It is technically chargeable, but the problem with it is the way it angles. A lot of times, especially faster bosses, are able to pretty much... It'll basically miss a lot of the times, which is a little bit disappointing. If it does hit, though, it does good damage. Yeah, honestly, if you can get the actual whole thing to hit, it's decent. Giant's Flame take these better, though, and of course our Sword Dance Ash of War on the Grave Scythe can do massive damage, too. Let's jump into equipment and stats. And we have the Grave Scythe and Flame Art Affinity with Sword Dance. We have the Erdtree Seal and the Giant Seal. We hit 51 poise. We have the Fire Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander, of course, Ritual Sword Talisman, Godfrey Icon, Flame tier, and we have the Strength tier for this one. So that last one was in there by mistake. I was trying different things in Heavy Affinity because you'll have 45 Strength and Heavy Affinity with Bloodflame Blade. You could do a lot with a build like this. A lot of versatility. 60 Vigor, 70 Faith, Golden Vow, Howl Shabiri, Blessings of Erdtree, Whirl of Flame, and Giant Flame Take Thee. And next up here, we have the Holy Light build. Now, for the Holy Light build, what we have here is the Coated Sword in our Mate Hand, so a really cool Ash of War. And then the offhand, we have the Broadsword in Sacred Affinity with Sacred Blade. And what we're using here is mainly the two-handed moveset. You could use the Coated Sword's Ash of War for massive damage, but of course you could use the two-handed moveset for a ton of holy damage on two different straight swords. This is a favorite, by the way, on this list because I really like straight swords and I feel like they're underrated. You can make good builds with them that are powerful enough, and this may be a decent build for DLC too. Let's jump into equipment. For equipment, we have the Coated Sword. We have the Broadsword and Sacred Affinity with Sacred Blade. We have the Erdtree Seal. We hit 51 poise. Sacred Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander. We have the Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman, Holy tier, and Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, we have 80 Faith, we have 23 Mind, 23 Endurance. These are our Faith stats again, and overall really good Faith stats, by the way. A lot of versatility here. And then for our buffs, we have Golden Vow, and then we're using Blessings of the Erdtree again, and Howl Shabiri. And for our last build, we have the Spinning Omen. Now, this could do a decent amount of bleed build-up and a good amount of damage. And, of course, if you're on base New Game or New Game Plus, you'll get good poise damage, too, because we're using Spinning Slash in Quality Affinity with the Omen Cleaver. Alright, as we take on two dragons here, I want to mention one more time real quick. In the comment section below, if you've been following this video before we get into our quick DLC prep, definitely comment below what you're feeling as far as DLC in terms of your build. What build do you think you're going to bring into DLC, and how well do you think it's going to do? For me, if you haven't checked it out on the channel, I'm using a Strength and Faith build. You can check that out on my channel now. The DLC build should be easy to find. It's right there in a playlist, I think, by itself, and that's going to be the build and stats I'm taking into DLC. And here's the other dragon you might have been wondering about. So, by the way, we have around 700 AR, which is pretty impressive in Quality Affinity with quality stats. And then for bleed buildup, we're getting around 95 bleed with Bloodflame Blade, and Spinning Slash is doing substantial damage. It's weird to look back at launch for Elden Ring too. Looking back at launch now, it's been what, 2.5 years, 2 years, 4 months, something like that. It's been incredible. So this channel has grown a lot in the meantime, and time really goes fast. From the time this channel started, which was around June of 2022, so it's been about 2 years. It's been an incredible journey. I just want to thank again my community. It has been awesome. Can't wait for DLC. If you're not in the Discord, by the way, I know a lot of people are going to be looking for items and stuff when DLC comes around, so definitely join the Discord. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people trading there and whatnot as far as the Discord goes, and I can also answer questions and help with your build. Let's jump into equipment. And for equipment, we have the Omen Cleaver in Quality Affinity. We're using Bloodflame Blade and Spinning Slash. Any seal for buffs, hit 51 points. Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragoncrest, Great Shield Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Thorny Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats on the last build here, we have 60 Vigor, 21 Mind, 30 Endurance. We have 40 Strength, 60 when we're two-handing this, 45 Dexterity, 25 Faith with the Faith here. We are using Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, and Bloodflame Blade. And now it's time for the Smithing Stone Bell-Bearing locations. The first one can be found in Liurnia of the Lakes at Rhea Lucaria Crystal Tunnel, and that's for regular smithing stones. You'll get 1s and 2s. The second one is at Sealed Tunnel in the Altless Plateau for 3s and 4s. The next one is at Zamar Ruins, and that's going to give you 5s and 6s. You're going to have to go into the ruins, and it has a basement part. And the last one you get from defeating the Godskin boss, the duo boss fight, at Dragon Temple Altar for 7s and 8s. And for Sombers, the first one can be found at Celia Crystal Tunnel. You could also buy 1s and 2s, though, from EG and Liurnia of the Lakes as well. And the second one for 3s and 4s, you can find that at this tunnel, the Altless Tunnel in the Altless Plateau. Again, that's going to give you 3s and 4s for the Sombers. And the next one is at the First Church of America. If you want 5s and 6s, you're going to have to go to Mountaintops of the Giants to grab this one. And the next one is very easy to get because once you get to Farum, you can't miss this one. It's at Tempest Facing Balcony. That's going to give you 7s and 8s for Sombers. And the last one's at beside the Great Bridge. You're going to go back down the elevator and into the room with the enemies there, and it's at the altar. And now for our last minute DLC prep. Things to do. Make sure you have all smithing and somber bell bearings. You're going to want to upgrade new weapons. Make sure you have the Shard of Alexander. That's in the description below. Make sure you have Millicent's Prosthesis or Rotten Wing Sword Insignia. Magic Scorpion Charm as well if you're a magic user. That's in the description below. The Godfrey icon is amazing. You can find it at the Ever Jail near the Erdtree Gazing Hillside of Grace. Grab the Blasphemous Blade, which can keep you alive in dungeons. Our friend Pastorgainz Game has an entire quest guide. That's in the description below. I recommend checking that out. And then we have to defeat Moog and Radon to get into the DLC. Only 30% of people on Xbox have done it. Have 60 Vigor even on base new game because Fromsoftware DLCs are typically very difficult, and of course have most of the base map open so you could return easily to grab anything. And thanks for watching this one. This is probably going to be my last fun build video for a while because we're going to be focused on a lot of powerful stuff and new stuff when the DLC arrives, of course, because there's going to be a ton of new weapons and builds to go through. And of course, while they'll be fun, we're going to find a lot of the powerful stuff and we're going to make some really good builds out of it, of course. We have less than a week to go by the time this video is released before DLC. I cannot wait. Be sure to sub. You're not going to want to miss out on this channel's content. Have a wonderful day.